Welcome everyone to tonight's community forum on housing. We're here to discuss our renewal for our housing production plan. Thank you for coming out on an ugly night tonight, but this is important information to share with you. Emily's going to give us a presentation, but before we start, I wanted to introduce our committee. We've been working on this since the spring. We meet as a group and we discuss the elements of what you're going to see tonight. So on the committee, I want to introduce our presenter, Emily Globitz. She's a principal planner for CMRPC. To my left, we have Adam Menard, Dr. Adam Menard. He's our town planner. Darlene Coyle, she's our DDS department head. And Brooke Holgren, our economic development coordinator. And Ahmed Kazanovich, your town manager. So welcome, everybody. Some of the issues you'll be hearing about tonight deal with, understanding more on a local issue about our housing needs and demands. This plan hopefully will create a vision for future affordable housing here in town, which is much needed. And it identifies areas in town that are primed for potential development. Before Emily gets started, just want to tell you we have some snacks up there. If you're welcome to help yourself, if you want to grab something now before we get started, please do so. And I just ask that you sign up, if you haven't already signed up, if you could sign up before you leave. So with that, Emily, I'll turn it over to you for a presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Oh, okay. So thank you so much for coming out tonight, like Ed said, on this kind of gross Monday night. But I promise you it'll be well worth it. We're going to start off the first half with a presentation. The second half, we have kind of an interactive breakout activity. We'll have some maps in the back that we'll be gathering around and talking about, and I'll explain that a little later on. Yeah, so this is just the agenda for tonight, and I'll try to get us all wrapped up after the breakout activity by 7:45, so we can get you out of here before 8 o'clock. Like, if you need any chips or water or anything, feel free to stop me and I'll toss you a bag of chips. All right, so let's just get this started with what is a housing production plan? Why are we here tonight discussing this? So a housing production plan is a 5-year plan that has to be approved by the state. It helps create a vision for the future of housing in a community by examining the local housing need and demand, constraints to development and opportunities for new housing, and it has a set of recommendations for the town to pursue. So it's, like I said, it's a 5-year plan. So the town of Auburn has one in place right now. It was passed in 2017, so when that expires, we want to have a plan in place just ready to go for the next 5 years, guiding housing production for the coming 5 years. So the 3 major components of a housing production plan, we've got the comprehensive housing needs assessment. So basically that's all of the demographic and housing data, projections for the future. We'll dig deeper into development constraints, limitations, the capacity for the town's growth, and the plan to mitigate development constraints. The second part of this is the affordable housing goals. So this is both a set of numerical production goals and an assessment of the types of housing that are needed. The third part of the plan is the implementation strategies. So both identifying specific sites, which would be most appropriate for development in the future, and identifying any appropriate zoning and policy changes that might help facilitate new production of housing. I should just note that I'm going to go through these slides, and then there will be an opportunity for question and answer, just in probably about 20 minutes or so. So how can this plan help the town? There's a number of ways this is going to be a really good benefit for Auburn. It helps address unmet housing needs and demands, establish a vision for the future of housing with clear goals and objectives. I'll get more into this in a little bit, but it'll help the town meet the state's 10% affordable housing goal. It will help guide 40B developments under comprehensive permitting. I'll also talk a little bit more about that in coming slides. And it influences and identifies the type, location, and amount of housing being developed in the future. I also have Auburn's 2017 plan up here if anyone wants to flip through it and get a sense of what this plan is going to look like. Just a brief overview of the project timeline. We kicked this off in March. We've done a series of data collection. We had a survey out in the spring. The survey results, if you haven't grabbed them, there's copies up here. Today we're here running the community forum to get even more input and present the results of the survey. After that, myself and the committee will be working on drafting goals and strategies, updating the ones from the previous plan. I should mention that all of these committee meetings are open to the public. They're posted on the town's website. So if you ever feel like kind of checking in and just getting a sense of what we're talking about, you're more than welcome to. They're on Zoom. Yeah, so then the next phase of that will be drafting the plan and then seeking public input. So you will have another opportunity for input if you want to leave your email address here so you can get emailed a draft of the plan when it's prepared. Please do so. Then the draft plan needs to be adopted by the planning board and the Board of Selectmen prior to being submitted to the state. So everyone's favorite topic, Chapter 40B. There's a lot of kind of misinformation around this. So I want to give this an opportunity to kind of clarify what 40B is and how this plan kind of is incorporated and how it helps give the town a little more local control over these 40B developments. So one of the reasons for doing a housing production plan is to strategize ways to increase the supply of affordable housing. In this context, when we're referring to affordable housing, we're using a definition set by the state and federal governments. There's always naturally occurring affordable housing, but in this sense, we're talking about housing that is deed restricted to households earning 80% or less of the area median income. So I'll talk a little bit more about what that means in the next slide. But essentially, affordable housing, it's not referring to the design of the housing, the type, the method of how it's constructed. It's just to the cost of housing to the consumer. So yeah, it's important to note that the calculations of the income limits are set by HUD, the federal government, which determines who is eligible for affordable housing. So Chapter 40B provides opportunities for developers to bypass local zoning in towns that don't have 10% of their housing stock deed restricted as affordable. So currently Auburn falls into this. I think it's only about 5% of the town's housing stock is deed restricted as affordable. So it's units that are only available to households earning 80% or less of the area median income. So just a little background on, I want to say like the threat kind of that 40B poses, but if for towns that haven't met this 10% threshold, it offers opportunities to developers to bypass local zoning regulations and build more densely in any area of town. So if a developer comes along and includes long-term affordability restrictions to at least a quarter of the units that they're proposing, they can bypass and build, for example, in a single-family area that's only zoned for single-family housing, they can build multifamily housing. So it doesn't waive other permitting requirements and building requirements, things like just the zoning, just to be clear. So they still have to comply with any Wetlands Protection Act requirements and wastewater disposal, things like that. And just to note, this housing production plan is a powerful tool because once it's in place, if the town builds 0.5% of its housing stock as affordable over the course of 1 year, it can then deny comprehensive permits. Or if it was to build 1% of its existing housing stock as affordable units over 2 years, it can also deny, it can deny comprehensive permits for the next 2 years. So that's also an important aspect of why we're doing this plan, allowing the town to have more control. So this is a way to just kind of break down what is area median income, what are these income limits that I'm talking about. So this is updated by the federal government every year. The area median income currently for Auburn and I believe it's 30 surrounding towns, so it's towns like Boylston, Northborough, Millbury, Worcester, there's a group of them. The area median income for that is currently $122,000. So, so HUD uses a formula that sets income thresholds based on the number of people living in a household. So you can see I have it kind of broken up by the number of people. So for a single person household, currently the income limit for a rental unit to qualify for an affordable housing rental unit would be about 65, almost 66,000 for a single person. For a two-person household, that would be about 75,000. So affordable housing, you can see benefits all areas of the town. People who qualify for this could be teachers, firefighters, retirees that are living on a fixed income, child care providers, like people who are really core parts of the community. So I think that's all I have for that. And just a breakdown of the subsidized housing in Auburn, what the town currently has and what it needs to get to the 10% requirement. So currently, as of the most recent census, which is just released, the full results were just released about a month ago, Auburn has 6,979 year-round housing units. So seasonal units aren't included in this. It's just people who are living in here year-round. That's kind of the basis that we're going to always use the percentage that's going to be based off of. So currently, on the inventory of affordable housing in town, there are 366 units. So out of the 6,979, that's 5.24%. The town needs to have a total of 698 units. So if the town were to produce, for example, 35 units, affordable units, over the course of 1 year, it would be exempt. It would be able to deny those comprehensive permits, 40B developments for a year. So just to give you a sense of how the town compares to its neighbors in terms of your subsidized housing percentages. So just one of your neighbors, Worcester, is at 12.14%. You can see the dashed line going across the chart shows the 10% goal there. But a lot of people are in the kind of in the same boat here. All right. So just kind of quickly, I just wanted to go over some of the demographics that Auburn currently is at in terms of population and households and housing stock. What you have, just so this can kind of, when we're having our breakout discussions, guide kind of those discussions, because when we're considering certain populations, they might have different housing needs. So this is just good to have in the back of your mind. So currently there are 6,750 total households with a total population of close to 17,000. We have over a quarter of householders are living alone. 15% of all households are elderly single-person households, so single-person households over the age of 65. 29% of all households have children under the age of 18. 29% of residents over the age of 65 are living with some type of disability. The median age is 44.6. Like many towns, most really towns in central Massachusetts, that has gone up significantly since 2000. So our populations are getting older. The median household income for Auburn is about $94,000. According to the census, 40% of households are earning less than $75,000 each year. And some housing characteristics. 82% of all occupied housing units are owner-occupied, while 18% are renter-occupied. When this survey was done, the vacancy rate was about 3.6%. In a healthy market, you want to have between 4 to 6%. So you don't want your vacancy too high, you don't want it to be too low so no one can move in, but you don't want to have empty houses in town. So it's at a pretty healthy vacancy rate, at least when this survey was done. Over 3/4 of homes are single-family detached homes. The median home value, I think this was as of 2021 or 2022, was about $295,000. The median sales price of a single-family home in 2022 was just over $400,000, while the median sale price of a condominium in 2022 wasn't that far behind. It's interesting, usually that's more of an affordable option or an option for people to downsize to, but it really isn't that far off from your standard single-family home. So hopefully everyone had a chance to grab a copy of the community survey results, but if you haven't, just let me know. I'm just going to quickly go over some of the highlights of them. So let's see. So ideally, when doing a survey, you're not going to get everyone to respond. I would love it if everyone did, but the best we can aim for is getting a good representation of who's living in town. So we compared the age breakdown of people who took the survey versus the total age brackets of those age 20 or plus in the town. That's probably the typical survey age that people would take the survey. So for most age brackets, yeah, I'm referring to the chart on the left here. For most of the age brackets, there weren't huge discrepancy, but just looking at this, ideally we would have had more responses from people under 30, really under 40, and we were a little bit more overrepresented with people in the age 40 to 60 bracket. So I think that's just to preface these results. So overall, we had 259 residents fill out the survey. 89% were homeowners and 6% who took it are renters. About half of the respondents have lived in town for more than 20 years. 44% live in a single person or a two-person household. So, getting to the good stuff. According to the survey results, there were a few options that asked people to describe their most desired housing types if they were to be developed in the future, and the populations they think are most in need of more diverse, more increased housing options. So the most desired housing types really kind of reflected what is already here, which is fine. Small market rate homes geared towards first-time homebuyers, small market rate homes geared towards seniors, medium-sized single-family homes, small to medium-sized single-level homes, accessory dwelling units, and cottage housing communities. The top population that was described to be most in need of increased housing options were seniors, followed by families, then first-time homebuyers, then young professionals, then low-income households. Some of the questions on this next slide were thinking about the future, if you want to stay here, if you want to stay in this community, and if you want to remain in your current residence as you're aging. So really a majority of people, they call Auburn home. Like about half said it's very important for them to continue living in Auburn as they age. About a third of respondents plan to live in their current home as they age, and they anticipate they'll be able to afford their home and associated costs. However, 8% said they're not going to be able to remain in their current home as they age because they won't be able to afford their home and associated costs. Then we wanted to dig a little deeper and see why people would want to move if that was an option. So the top one was looking for an area that has a lower cost of living. The second option was maintaining your current home will be too expensive. Number 3 was looking for a different home size that meets your needs. Number 4, wanting to live in a different climate. I don't think Auburn can do very much about that despite global warming, but number 5 was maintaining your current home will be too physically challenging. About 2/3 of respondents reported paying more than 30% of their monthly income towards housing costs. So this includes things like mortgage, rent, property, taxes, utilities, insurance. Kind of a standard metric for affordability that's used nationwide is that you shouldn't be paying more than 30% of your monthly income towards housing costs. Otherwise, you're labeled cost burdened. So technically, that 2/3 of the people who took this survey would fall into this kind of label. 28% of respondents said that affording their home is a challenge. So we've got 1/4 of the people who took this survey are having a difficult time paying for housing costs, maybe having to sacrifice other necessities like food or health care, education to pay for housing. 30% of respondents would qualify for affordable housing based on their household income and number of people per household. It was just a quick calculation I did based on what people responded with the income that they gave when they took the survey and the number of people in their household that they did. So just other themes that came up in the survey results that aren't directly related, but pretty tangentially related to housing and affordability and cost of living were traffic, safety and noise issues, town services and school enrollment, town infrastructure, including roads and sidewalks, the rising cost of living, including there were many comments about taxes, and of course the preservation of wildlife habitats, open space and wetlands. So, given all of these challenges that I've described, what options exist for fulfilling Auburn's housing needs? So there's a few different things steps the town can take to move forward to both meet that 10% affordable housing threshold that I described earlier, but also provide housing that meets the needs of current and future residents. So Auburn can choose to work with developers on what is called friendly 40B developments. So the developer would still be bypassing local zoning. However, it's a less hostile situation, and the developer could seek public input on aspects of construction. The town can encourage more residential development types with modest density, such as townhouses, cluster developments, smaller scale apartments or condominiums in suitable areas of town, which will add both much needed homes, but also not completely alter the small town character of Auburn. So you might have heard this term, we use it a lot in the planning world. It's called missing middle housing. So it's not the single family home on a kind of medium or large lot, and it's not 100 units of apartments. It's something in the middle where you look at it and you're not like, oh, that's huge. That doesn't fit in here. That sticks out like a sore thumb. But it's fitting more, families and more, housing opportunities. The town can concentrate new housing development or pursue adaptive reuse of existing buildings in already developed areas of town. So if there's an unused municipal building or a church that could be redeveloped into housing, or a vacant lot that's just been sitting there, that would ideally be where new housing would go. As we all know, housing is not cheap, so, and reliable resources, sources of funding are required, so pursuing ways where the town can set aside funds specifically for housing initiatives can be incredibly helpful. So there's a few opportunities for this. There's what is called an Affordable Housing Trust Fund, in which it's not a tax, it's mostly for donations or things like that are just set aside out of the general municipal budget for anything that might come up in terms of like a housing initiative. Or there's always the Community Preservation Act, which funds can be used both for housing, but also for historical preservation and open space preservation. The town can also amend zoning to allow greater diversity in housing options. So certain types of housing development that are more suitable for affordable housing might be more restricted. So taking a look at the zoning to see if there's ways that could allow more multifamily housing or greater density, or maybe just less restrictive parking or setback requirements that can be prohibitive to developers, but little changes like that can make development of affordable housing or multifamily housing a little bit easier. Speaking of zoning, I just wanted to give you a sense of what can currently be created in town. So not all of these housing options can be created everywhere, but all of these, at least somewhere on the map of the town, somewhere in town, can be created. So Auburn's actually been pretty progressive with its zoning changes. I work with Auburn and 39 other towns, and it's made a lot of changes in the recent years. I'm sure our committee could speak to them, to allow more diverse options. All right, any questions?
I'm a town meeting member for Precinct 4, and I get a funny feeling that this is going to blow the walls right out of this town. I mean, everything I've heard you speak right now is taxes, 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 because now we're going to need more schools. We're going to need more emergency personnel. I still think that we should have took the Mary D. School and the JB School, and we should have did them over. Maybe we could have got away with it for $35 million to do the two schools over, but we sold them for $50 million, and now the town's schools are already blowing out the walls. We have construction trailers that they've been using for classrooms for almost 20 years. And you're talking, I looked at some of the pictures up there, if I counted it right, one of them was a 6-story building.
That's for the activity. I haven't explained the activity
This
yet.
is going to be the city of Auburn, not the town of Auburn. This is crazy, and I don't even want to bring up Perry Place because I could go on till 10 o'clock tonight about that one.
Yeah, so I would just say that what we're doing here today is to create a plan that gives the town more local control over what is going to be built. At the end of the day, because you are under the 10% threshold, under 40B, developers can still come in and they can build, and the town can't do much about it. So creating this plan is saying, okay, we're going to gradually work towards our 10% mark. So I'll explain the activity also in a little bit. That's just, it's just a brainstorming activity. I'm not coming here asking, hey, what should we do? I'm gonna go talk to a developer tomorrow and tell them to build a huge apartment complex. This is just kind of theoretical, just to get people together to talk about this, to envision, okay, what would we like to see in the future? If you wanna put only single family housing in the future, that's fine. I just wanna hear that from you. So this is just an opportunity to get public feedback. So I definitely appreciate you coming today and sharing that.
You'll have to forgive me, I'm torn between two meetings
Okay, wow, wearing a lot of hats. Yeah, go ahead. Can you pass the microphone?
Patrick Jones.
Oh,
I'm
there
a-
we go. Cool. Yeah.
Jones, I'm a homeowner in Precinct 2. A couple of questions, and sort of along the lines with the point this gentleman made. The 35 units for Safe Harbor,
Yeah.
as compared to the 366 units being at 5.24%. I'm thinking that that means that as long as we're moving at a pace that we're building and we don't jump to 366 in a year, it gives us the opportunity to stay within Safe Harbor, but yet continue to grow at a doable pace.
Correct. Yes, you're right.
Then my next question is, nowhere in here, and I didn't look at the prior plan, just a couple of things before we brainstorm, but has any consideration or feedback been given on mixed-use property? Because you can't control your zone. It just was never mentioned, and so I would envision that this plan that we're trying to put together over the next 5 years could possibly consider mixed use or an opportunity to offer a complexity or a flexible amount of activity around any particular given set of units. And I guess the last thing when we go into talk, I'm here because I'm one of these people that I want to see us move at a manageable pace. I want the integrity of Auburn, which is a great community, to stay intact, but yet I want to be fair to everybody. I don't think it's easy to sit here and say that. I don't think it's so easy to accomplish. So thank you.
Yeah, mixed use will definitely be part of the activity, which I'll explain in a little bit. But yeah, a few different parcels have come up in our discussions about potential future areas theoretically for housing, and we agree that it's important to grow the residential base and have housing for people who live here, but also the tax base and the commercial base as well. And mixed use is great. It gives people options to just walk to some kind of office or shop or something like that. So yeah, we'll definitely want to hear more about that when we do the breakout activity.
Steve Consilvio,
Hey.
Precinct 1. The 35 units is affordable? Is the 35 units affordable housing or just housing?
Yeah, it would have to be affordable units.
And so we don't have a CPA, correct? And
Correct.
Is the idea to implement the CPA or work without one? Actually, let me back up. I was late because I was across the hall. Who are you?
Who am I? That's a great question. I don't even think I introduced myself to anyone. So my name is Emily Glovitz. I work for the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. So I don't actually work for the town. I'm more of a consultant for the town. I work with Auburn and the 39 surrounding towns. I primarily focus on housing planning. So I've done a lot of these housing production plans. I also love working on master plans and comprehensive planning. So just getting towns to kind of think about and envision their future, come up with a set of goals, and kind of get them to move forward. So yeah, the 35 units, those would have to be affordable units produced.
So there's nothing, I read the plan today that's on the website, which was 2017?
Yeah, the 2017.
There's no discussion about who's setting the pricing on housing at all. The assumption is whatever the developer comes up with is going to be the best price. I know in Worcester they're talking about selling the DPW property to a developer, or they're looking for bids. Why shouldn't they should be doing that in-house? And then they can control the price and make it affordable, instead of having the developer somehow magically decide what 10% is, right? I'm on the Auburn Housing Board very recently, so I don't know anything to speak of. But if we can, the state hasn't built hardly any affordable housing. So it seems to me that if we need to get affordable housing, we should be developing it in-house and be setting our own prices, hiring contractors to build the building. We could run schools, we could run fire departments. Like, the idea that we don't have the skills to build a building seems a little far-fetched, to be honest with you. I think we do.
Yeah, the interesting thing about what qualifies as affordable housing, it's a metric that's kind of set by the federal government and the state governments, essentially. So I think I had a slide here. But it has to be, it's something that is kind of probably going to change every year a little bit. So it has to be 80% of the area median income. So the median income, they're going to update that every year, but they set these income thresholds each year. So for it to kind of count on that subsidized housing inventory, which is the state's list of all the affordable units, for it to count, it has to comply kind of with these metrics that are set by HUD. Oh, the
What I'm
property.
saying is we should be taking a much more active role in creating the price of the property rather than allowing the marketplace, which obviously cannot do it. And if you think about, there's plenty of cities and towns that have a CPA. They still have all of the same housing problems. So there's no magic bullet if we had a CPA. We're going to have all the same problems 4 years down the line. And the other thing I would say is in the same report, it says that something like 10 to 25% have foreclosure issues and are under duress. So forget about the affordable housing for the poor. The people that are in the middle class also cannot afford the housing while they're in it. So there's obviously going to be a lot of resistance to the CPA because they're only going to get a tax on $50. They're not going to get, like, we just move the money around from pocket to pocket. We can't do anything to someone who's in a house. But my personal experience as a homeowner is I own my house outright after 35 years. If I leave my house, I can easily downsize. I can't live anywhere cheaper. So I pay $300 a month in taxes. I can't live anywhere for $300. I don't need all this space. So where am I going to go? So the leadiness of the marketplace is never going to get me out of the house until I'm too sick to stay. And that's why there's a housing crisis. Because people can't move out, people can't move in. And if you let the developers and the realtors sell all the prices, and encourage higher prices, how are you ever going to get a lower price for people that are not making that kind of money? At some point, you got to deal with the marketplace, because the government, we have the power to regulate the marketplace. But all of this is, none of this is regulating anything. It's just hoping a developer will do something. Go around them. Like just jump over the mountain. There needs to be a better plan B, basically.
Yeah, that's a lot of great input. Also, if anyone from the committee wants to pipe in as well.
So I really don't want to bring it up, but, the Board of Selectmen negotiated a fair LIP with the builder on Perry Place. And now the guy backed out, and now he's going to stuff it someplace where town meeting members or anybody, residents or anybody else isn't going to see it. So this is why they need to turn around and put limits on these 40B housings. They give them too much power. They need to put restrictions on them, give the towns more power than what the developer has. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, background on 40B, I think it was created, it's a law that was created about 50 years ago at least. So I agree, there's definitely parts of it that need to be updated. I'm hoping maybe with the new administration, they can put more reasonable updates. She says no. But we'll see. But it's something, I think it was passed at the end of the 1960s, maybe 1969. So it's something we've been working with for a while, but this is what we have to do.
So how can
That's a good question.
That's done at the legislative level, so you would have to work with your local delegation to either sponsor legislation to amend or to modify the existing law. The law has been enacted. We have to live by what's on the books. And unfortunately, it allows developers to bypass local options that gives them more flexibility to create affordable housing.
What about a building moratorium? I was told Millbury just did that.
They did, yeah, that's correct. Building moratorium, it's an option, yeah. Sometimes if you have one in place, the state doesn't love it, so might kind of not get prioritized for certain state grants or things like that if they're housing related, so it can be a little iffy with that. It's an option, yeah.
I don't think the state really cares, because if they did, they wouldn't be dropping off all the migrants in towns and not telling the town until 3 days later.
Yeah.
You know, just because we have a hotel, a vacancy, the state comes in and says, hey, guess what, we're dropping off 100 families, or, you know, and they drop them off in that crap hotel down there in Sutton.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate, situation we're all in here.
If we could stick to the topic that we are presenting on, I would appreciate it.
Yeah. Are there any more questions or, what is the percentage of, how much affordable housing is the?
No, they're all counted towards affordable housing. All of the units are, so there's 55 in each. So that gets counted towards that 366, which puts us at about 5-point-some odd %. But the affordable units there, is it 10%? 25%? Well, there's a different tier structure for the rates over here. I don't know what percentage is considered affordable.
Question, because I don't know. What is the definition of affordable housing? What is the percentage of normal rent versus affordable rent versus location of the house or the rental property?
Yeah, so affordable housing, it's just focused on the cost of housing to the consumer. So it's not about the structure of the building or where it's built. That isn't factored in when we're talking about affordable housing, at least in this context, when we're developing this plan. It can be both rental or for sale units. It's always going to be 80% or less of the area median income. So the area median income, it's the median income for a group of communities. The federal government kind of sets these groups and has their formula for how they kind of construct this. So it's basically, it can never go over an income limit of 80% of the area median income. So if you see here, and it's also, sorry, it's a terrible definition, but there's a lot of elements that go into it. So it's also based on the number of people living in a household. So it's going to be different if you're a single person versus if you're in a three-person household. So if your income is less, currently, as of this year, 2023, if your income is less than $65,550, you can qualify for affordable housing. If you're over that income limit and you're just a single person living alone, you're not going to qualify. So it's something that it's going to change each year because median incomes are changing, people get paid more or less, so it's going to be a little flexible each year, but basically it can't go over these income limits. I also have, do you have the presentation notes too? Might be a little bit easier to read. Oh, okay. Yeah. And for sale units, they also put caps on how much income you can have and assets and things like that, and how much you can resell the property for. But typically when affordable housing is built now, it's mostly rental units. So that's just what I was focusing on today. Okay, great. Great. So we're gonna do like a little breakout activity. Get to here. So feel free to get up and stretch and use the bathroom and anything, but then we'll get back and break out into 2 groups. So we've got tables at the back. So each table has a large map of the town, and there are red circles around what myself and the committee have designated as study areas. So it's land that potentially could be locations for future housing. Along with that map, there are a set, I printed out different, I'll call them stickers, but you're gonna have to stick them on yourselves, of options of different housing types. So I want you to talk amongst the groups and decide which housing option would be the best fit for each of the study areas. So the study areas, they might, there might also be areas that the committee has not circled. If you know of anyone that maybe is selling a parcel and interested in doing residential development, you can feel free to circle that area and talk with the committee about potential areas that aren't circled, but this is just a starting point for the discussions. Just a few quick notes. Even if there's a circle in a zone, the zoning can be changed, basically. So if an area is not currently zoned for a certain type of land use, certain type of housing, don't let that restrict your conversations and what you would potentially like to see there in the future, because that is something that can be changed. So just a quick, this few slides about what the housing types are, these little cutouts. So we've got accessory dwelling units, cottage housing communities, which are kind of like a group of clustered single-family homes, but they're a little bit smaller. They're generally between 800 and 1,200 square feet, and they're clustered around like an open space area or like a garden, something like that. Then we have duplexes, small-scale apartments, which are only like 2 to 6 rental units, small-scale condominiums, which kind of same size but are ownership units, large-scale apartments or condos. So this could be one large structure with apartments or condos in them, or kind of small to medium-scale structures that have numerous units in each of them. Usually there's common areas as well, like a pool or something like that. Small-scale mixed use. So this is usually just the first floor is occupied by commercial shops, things like that, and above it, 1 or 2 or 3 floors above are residential units. Then we have large-scale mixed use. So that's more at the bigger scale, like a block or neighborhood scale. And it's walkable. It offers residents more chances to live, work, and shop. In this picture I included, I think this from some city, but it's apartments, there's townhouses, there's shops, there's open space. And then we have adaptive reuse, which is unused or underutilized structures that could be converted into residential units. So this could be vacant stores in a shopping mall, or a church that's been sitting vacant and could be repurposed into 3 or 4 units of housing. Senior housing, which can kind of come in all shapes and sizes, from individual rooms and apartments, shared quarters, and have varying personal and medical care services. townhouses, which are small to medium size. They're attached, and yeah, side by side. They could be rental or ownership units. Okay, so those are all the housing types. So, yeah, you'll basically place the housing types that you think could be in the future, you'd feel comfortable seeing it developed next to each of the 6 study areas. So I hope that is clear, and someone from the committee will be at each table to help clarify this and kind of generate discussion. So this is all theoretical, and it's just really to help us get talking about this. I'm not calling up a developer tomorrow saying the town of Auburn wants a huge mixed-use complex, downtown. Like, I want to get a sense of what you'd feel comfortable seeing developed, or if there's some aspect that you really like about something, but maybe the scale, it's too big. You want a smaller scale of it. That's, I don't know what time we have here. 6:54. Okay, so the next, half an hour or so, let's do that discussion activity. And yeah, did I miss anything? Cool. And we've got snacks up here. Feel free to take a break. And also be around to answer questions and everything as well. Yeah, feel free to flip through it.